By nature, we should normalize 0 to 6 weeks being a complete crap show when it comes to sleep. When it comes to sleep and children's sleep and parent sleep, there's no one size fits all, really. It's addressing that child's needs, that family's needs, and take it all in totality and then addressing the issue. Are you doing okay? Is your baby doing okay? And I don't care, do your thing. But then you get to decide what a problem is or what problematic sleep looks like, because every family and every household is different.
Motherhood is all-consuming.
Having babies, nursing, feeling the fear of loving someone that much.
And there's this baby on your chest, and boom, your entire life has changed.
It's a privilege of being your child's safest space and watching your heart walk around outside of your body.
The truth is, I can be having the best time being a mum 1 minute, and then the next I'm questioning all my life choices.
I'm Lo Mansfield, your host of the Lo and Behold podcast. Mama of 4 littles, former labor and postpartum RN, CLC, and your new best friend in the messy middle space of all the choices you are making in pregnancy, birth, and motherhood. If there is one thing I know after years of delivering babies at the bedside and then having and now raising those 4 of my own, it is that there is no such thing as a best way to do any of this. And we're leaning into that truth here. With a mix of real life and what the textbook says, expert insights, and practical applications, each week we're making our way towards stories that we participate in, stories that we are honest about, and stories that are ours. This is the Lo and Behold podcast. What is up, my friends? We are going back with a guest today to the world of baby sleep. If you want to hear more from me and my thoughts on it, I'll address this a little bit in the podcast episode. I actually gave you more personal mom thought, anecdotal stuff about sleep in episode 54. So feel free to listen to that one as well as a great complement to the conversation I'm putting in front of you today. I have Dr. Sujay Consagra with me today. He's a professor at Duke, and he's the director of Duke University's Pediatric Neurology Sleep Medicine program. Feels like such a mouthful to say. He is excellent. He is popularly known as That Sleep Doc on social media, where he has over 700,000 followers across the platforms. He's also the inventor of the Lullaby Smart Crib mattress. He specializes in treating a variety of sleep disorders, including sleep apnea, insomnia, narcolepsy, and parasomnias. He works with adults and children, all the ages, all the spectrum. So I think that's really special and really cool about him as well. Dr. Consagra is the author of numerous peer-reviewed research publications and 5 books, including the book My Child Won't Sleep, which he qualifies as a high-yield, step-by-step guide to fixing common sleep issues in children of all ages, infants through adolescents. You guys are going to love this. He is so easy to talk to. He feels so kind. And I think it's just a gift to hear someone talk about sleep in such a stable, steady way. Sujay, I am so glad to have you here. You guys can hear me. I'm kind of laughing because I was just clarifying. What am I allowed to call you? So this is Sujay. I'm going to let you go ahead and introduce yourself more, let people know kind of who you are and maybe how they might be familiar with you already if they are.
Yeah, thanks, Lo. It's great to be here. I'm Sujay Consagra. I'm a child neurologist and a sleep medicine doctor at Duke, commonly known as That Sleep Doc on social media. I live and breathe sleep and all of the various things that sleep entails. And so glad to be here talking about it.
So one reason I brought you on, I would say too, is because, and you just mentioned this when you introduced yourself a little bit, is you are a sleep doctor, yes, but also this is, you can see this on your profile, right? So some people might be familiar with this, but this is about like adult and baby sleep, right? And so my brain lights up. I'm like, oh, baby sleep. I have all these parents in my community. That's the big thing. But I also just like that there's maybe this more holistic background of like sleep in general, right? And this understanding, not just about the baby, but also about you too. So
yeah,
do
absolutely.
you feel like work leans more heavily in one direction, or it really does all just come together and flows together and makes sense together?
Yeah, in my day job, I see only pediatric patients. I follow some of my patients, particularly my patients with narcolepsy. I follow into their 20s and rarely into their 30s. But our sleep medicine fellowship, which is a 1-year training program, is kind of cross training. It's all adult, pediatric, everything. And so we become very savvy taking care of sleep issues and sleep disorders across the age spectrum.
Okay, perfect. And then the other thing that I wanted you to get into for me a little bit is this idea of credentialing, because we were talking before we started that the sleep world, and I'm talking a little bit more about this baby sleep world now, or the toddler sleep world, is a little bit spicy. And you hear conversations a lot about there isn't any credentialing, there's no regulation. Like, how do we really know if this person actually knows what they're talking about? I don't care what their credentials are. I'd rather have someone who wants to be a mother the way I'm a mother. Like, how do you kind of address that with people, maybe online, certainly in practice as well, for what they could look for if this matters to them, or how they should
Sure.
kind of think about that conversation?
Yeah, so this is a great question. I will tell you that from a sleep medicine standpoint, when it comes to credentialing, we have a pretty standardized kind of training, and there's a board certification for sleep medicine. So that's kind of what we do. But getting to what you're addressing, which is there's a world of sleep professionals, sleep consultants that don't necessarily go through any sort of accrediting body. Now, it's fairly easy for me to essentially look at their profile, look at the type of content they're producing, and know whether this is more of an evidence-based person in the sleep world versus they're a little bit more fringe and maybe not so evidence-based. So it's fairly easy for me to kind of tease that apart. It may not be for those that are not familiar with the sleep medicine world. So I always say, be cautious. The red flags for me are I've come up with this brand new magical sleep solution that is only the Sujay solution regarding behavioral interventions, and this is the only thing I use. Because we know that when it comes to sleep and children's sleep and parents' sleep, there's no one size fits all, really. It's addressing that child's needs, that family's needs, and take it all in totality and then addressing the issue. Now, the other thing that I will say in defense of sleep consultants, because I know many now in the online world, and many of them are wonderful advocates for science-based sleep and sleep safety and all that stuff. I will say that even among sleep physicians, I can find folks that are a little bit fringe and not really going along with true evidence-based medicine. And so even in your most accredited kind of situations, you can still find people that may be kind of doing their own thing. So that's that's kind of my broad take on it.
Like, did you answer my question? You're supposed to tell me, what are we supposed to do and who are we supposed to look for?
I don't know, Lo. I don't know. And I'd be cautious. Again, if they are touting, I believe in evidence-based sleep approaches, behavioral sleep approaches, then I'm all about that. I know people, personally, like, Tracy Bronstein and Jane Havens that are in the sleep consulting space that are evidence-based practitioners. And so maybe one day I'll just come up with my own little database to be like, I trust these people. These are the ones that you should go to.
Yeah. Well, I think like so much of, the labor and birth world that I'm more in, lactation consulting, breastfeeding, stuff like that. It just always feels like this fine line as a parent to walk between, like, if you're someone who says, yes, I love the evidence-based stuff, or I want like evidence-based birth information, and then lining that up too with like the realities of the situation you're in, finding people who have that empathy for it without maybe sacrificing a certain principle that you care about or that they care about. I just think it's just like a complicated thing to do sometimes, because real life doesn't always follow the textbook
100%.
or the evidence. And so then I think that's why so many of us are like, but this doesn't make sense. And you said, you being whomever, like you said that this is what would happen in XYZ scenarios. I think it gets just so tough. Definitely with baby, particularly baby sleep as well.
Yeah. And I think when it comes to the evidence-based, the literature that we have when it comes to sleep disorders or labor and delivery, what we know, the principles that we think are applicable to that scenario form, I think, the kind of the scaffolding on which we build, because I guarantee every patient is in a situation that there's not any exact right answer based on the evidence because of all other factors that play a role. So we use that, I think, as the foundation, and then we build off of it. And, we just want to make sure that we're not doing things against what we know are safe, predictable, effective solutions in the sleep world.
Right. I know as a parent myself, I've had 4 kids, figured out how to get 4 kids to sleep, figured out how to get my own sleep in the midst of all of it. And so I do not think I'm an expert, except like an anecdotal expert, like personal experience expert after trying this a few times. But I do think I love that idea of like scaffolding and foundations. I released a solo podcast episode a while ago about sleep, and it was like, hey, I'm not an expert, just a mom, but I want to talk to you about like foundational things that have just been really valuable for me to float around. I call them anchors. And so I'm like, these are anchors for us about sleep, right? And so in the days that go completely wonky, or the times when the routine has changed again or whatever, we just can like float around these anchors and not get too far away from the things that this is still me speaking personally, have come to believe is true. So I feel like when it comes to sleep, if parents can get to that place where they feel really good about these, these things that they can hold on to, or maybe there's some evidence-based medicine to support their scaffolding, and they're like, I know I can anchor myself here, even while things are a little funky on this Monday, and then they're going to be funky again next Thursday through the weekend, because it changes so much. I just think that idea is so helpful to have those anchors to float around. And I want to get into some of those kind of like anchors and narratives, etc.
Let's do it
today too.
I love it. Yes, wonderful.
Okay, I have one question about adult sleep, since that you are someone who can really speak to that really well. If you have any sort of thoughts on, so someone actually dropped this in my DMs a while ago saying, basically, I'm summarizing, I'm getting like crap sleep end of pregnancy.
Yeah.
What do I do about that?
Yeah.
Is there an answer that you have for someone who comes to you with that conversation?
Yeah, it's so tough because most of my difficulty sleeping conversations entail an hour of like diving into all the different things that could be contributing. I'll give you like the 10,000-foot view when it comes to late stage pregnancy, which is one, is there any concern regarding restless leg? Because your child, as they're growing, they're also sucking iron out of you, and iron plays a big role in maintaining that comfort when it comes to that, discomfort with restless legs. So could there be an issue with iron stores? We know that obstructive sleep apnea symptoms can also start to worsen over time. And so that's something to keep in mind. Caffeine, if you are ingesting caffeine, the half-life of caffeine changes drastically during pregnancy. And the thought is that actually it doubles, meaning it takes longer for you to clear caffeine out of your system. So we want to keep that in mind too. If the same cup of coffee you were drinking before you got pregnant now is potentially affecting you differently. And then, of course, it's all the comfort things and the discomfort that comes along with pregnancy, and the areas, the ways that you can sleep and the ways that you can't sleep. And so, and that's best handled, I think, through you and your OB-GYN regarding the most safe and comfortable positions for you. But that was kind of the 10,000-foot view of things to look for during late stages of pregnancy.
Yeah, I mean, it makes perfect sense. It makes me think, again, this like applies to birth as well, but how there's always there's to some degree, pregnancy specifically, we're talking about, there's going to be this level of discomfort, right? But we don't have to ignore it. And so this includes sleep as well, where it's like, sorry, you're just going to sleep like crap when you're pregnant and you just have to deal with it, right? Like, are there some things like those you just brought up that we can talk about that we can use to address the discomfort, or maybe address some of these, the restless leg or whatever else might be going on, so that maybe you're not going to be 100%, but we can get you back to 85 or whatever. And I think sometimes we get lost a little bit. And I just think in pregnancy, you can get that dismissive, like, being pregnant just kind of sucks. So you just have to deal with it. And so I think sleep is one of those areas where it's like, no, speak up. We could maybe address this a little bit and get you to a better place.
And this gets to actually one of the problems in sleep medicine, which is you may have a fantastic OBGYN. They may not be as well versed in sleep disorders. You may have an outstanding sleep doctor, and they may not be as comfortable handling challenges when you're pregnant. So you mentioned at the start, do I have go-to people? I love the information from Jade Wu, W-U. And she is what I would consider an expert in the insomnia, and particularly for females, around pregnancy, around perimenopause, et cetera. She's fantastic. So that's a resource. And I think she's written a book as well that you could potentially check out. So.
Okay. Great. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, let's get to some of this newborn stuff, since that's probably what everyone's really like fiending to hear your thoughts on. So I kind of want to give you another, like I just said, I'm 8 months pregnant and I'm sleeping really badly. Let's switch and say, hey, I'm 8 months pregnant. Maybe they find you on social media. Maybe they're a friend in real life. And they're saying, I'm terrified about infant sleep because from what I can see, it feels like it's impossible for anyone to do it well. Maybe this is like another 10,000-foot back view, but how do you speak to someone like that who approaches you with I think is a little bit of a valid fear or worry?
Yeah.
Because of probably what they're taking in, seeing online. And it is tough. Like, let's not pretend it's not tough.
Yes. I see it in both directions. I see some that are terrified and some that are watching everybody's highlight reels on social media, and people are backpacking, and through Europe with their 6-week-old, and they're like, oh, this is going to be a cakewalk. And I'm all about normalizing what should be normalized regarding normal sleep patterns. And then I like to bin it. And so there are certain bins of when it comes to age regarding sleep physiology. And that also helps me give them actionable advice regarding things that can be done. And so let's start at the very beginning, like 0 to 6 weeks. By nature, we should normalize 0 to 6 weeks being a complete crap show when it comes to sleep, right?
100%.
And many other things, unfortunately. Like, this is like the perfect storm of like, gosh, you've just gone through a delivery. You have just passed a human through your body, Your body is recovering, hormones are changing, a child is crying, your in-laws are giving you advice on what you should do. This is like the perfect storm when it comes to
Breastfeeding, if you're breastfeeding.
challenges
it's
of
a lot.
breastfeeding, postpartum anxiety, postpartum depression. I mean, the list goes on, right? And then of
Right.
course you throw sleep deprivation. But I do want to normalize young infant sleep patterns. So when you're 0 to 6 weeks, you don't really have much semblance of a circadian rhythm. People always say, oh, they have their days and nights confused. No, they don't. They don't even know what day and night is right now. They have no idea what's day and what's night. And so you're going to see roughly 50 to 60% of sleep at night and the other 40 to 50% during the daytime. And child's going to wake based on their hunger cues, and they're going to fall asleep based on their sleep drive. And that's normal. That's normal for infants. They should be waking up frequently. They should be eating frequently. This is just a time where you have to kind of hang on. Ask for help if help is available. Use the tools that you have to hopefully make sleep and your life daytime more bearable. Talk to your OB/GYN or your pediatrician or your family medicine doctor if there are concerns about PPD and PPA. It's a rough 6 weeks, But let's normalize it. Let's get you set up for that, knowing that, yeah, it's going to be a challenge and things will get better. So there's reasons to stay optimistic as well. Right. Now, what can you do? What are actionable things you can do? I'd love to just touch on these. One is it actually helps to have, I think, a nighttime routine that maybe lasts 10, 20 minutes at nighttime. Your baby is not going to give 2 poopy diapers whether you go through the routine or not. It's not really for them at this age. It's mostly for you to have a time in your day where you can maybe get away. If you have a partner, the partner can be there with you. Maybe you give the baby a bath every other day. Maybe you have some time to just give the baby a massage, read to them. Just some time where you're away from all the chaos and the mess and whatever else is going on, right? So start doing that at some point at night. And that will translate into a routine that hopefully sticks, that will then benefit the baby when they get older. If you are breastfeeding, and we of course encourage parents, if they are able to and willing to breastfeed, we want to make sure they have every opportunity to be successful at that. Because moms make melatonin and their breast milk is going to have some melatonin in it. If you are pumping, I recommend, and I wouldn't go crazy over this, but it's nice if you could just put a little AM or PM on that stored milk and then give it to the child at that time, because that might also help set some of that early body clock timing. And then, of course, as we mentioned, asking for help when you can get help. Those are my kind of key actionable items at that stage.
It's funny.
And be optimistic. Sorry, I was going to say be optimistic because things will get better. I promise they will get better.
Yeah, we do need to put that little pin in the conversation too of like it does get better. And I would say, going back to that initial like I'm 8 months pregnant and I'm terrified, like I wouldn't want someone to be terrified. My hope would be in a conversation like that. I'm sure yours as well is like, hey, let's actually talk through some of these normals. Let's just set expectations better, because I think a lot of times then it's that the expectation is not met. And then that's when someone's showing up online being like, oh, I'm going to terrify everybody. And really a lot of times it's just the expectation was wrong at the start. And then that's trickling out to other people via however someone's choosing to share it. It's funny you talk about, my mom brain was just listening to those 3, or I guess you said 4 things at the end of ways to kind of have some rhythms and routines, even though it's going to be chaos, and that's normal. I'm just trying to picture like what bedtime looks like, quote unquote bedtime, right? And having these routines, but then also recognizing, for me, I'm sitting here going, but newborns don't have a bedtime. Like they do whatever the heck they want, right? So it's like this arbitrary, for me, that's how it was. You could tell me if you disagree. It was like, they're not going to go to bed at 7 p.m. like this whole 7 to 7 thing when they're 3 weeks old. Now, maybe at 9 or whatever time feels good to you, you're going to start doing your wind down with them, but then know that like, they're still going to do their thing after that bedtime,? And so I feel like, again, in so many of these sleep conversations, like I already said, I don't feel like an expert. I feel so much like a mom, and I'm like, oh, that's true. And also, it's really wild and crazy. Like just all of the stuff that you mentioned.
I feel plenty of reason to prepare, but not be scared. I agree with you. I think having those expectations are important. I often see questions in parenting forums where they're like, my child is 5 weeks and I can't get them on a schedule, to which I'm just like, who told you they were going to have one? It's normal to not be scheduled. You can't spoil your baby. You can't really put them on this wake window schedule that early. This is the time where, again, you just kind of hang on. You do your best that you can to just enjoy this really small new baby without worrying too much about routines. Reading your baby's cues, right? Baby's hungry, all right, we're going to feed them. The baby seems sleepy, we're going to rock them to sleep and do whatever we need to do. You're not going to spoil your child at this age, and you're not going to really get them in a schedule at this age. Let's set that expectation for everybody.
Right. And as hard as it is, I mean, I'll just throw in this. I'd go back and I would do it again tomorrow. I mean, it's such a sweet, exhausting thing, but it's just, yeah, I think it's just so worth it. Not that maybe you probably don't need to hear that and you already know that. But yeah, I think the sleep thing, those early weeks are wild, but man, they're quick in the grand scheme of things. And then you're missing it and you'd go back for a night where you're holding them. I don't know. I would. Maybe some people are like, absolutely not, low. You're crazy. I would.
There's probably something evolutionarily protective about being so sleep deprived that you forget how miserable things were. And then you're like, I'll do it again because I forgot how terrible it was. You know, not terrible, but how hard it was.
Evolutionarily protective of the Ring of Fire or whatever those labor things are. And then you're like, I will do that again. Sure. That sounds great.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Okay. Let's segue then. You mentioned some things that are kind of perfect for this next question that I do want to ask. I know you're big or firm on, like safe sleep surfaces and safe sleep practices.
Yes.
So how do you address that with the kind of reality of like, oh, they only want to sleep on me, or I'm really struck. They won't sleep in this bassinet next to me.
Yeah.
Those first weeks are wild, like you said, and we're snuggling and holding and just getting them to sleep when they can and when they will.
Yes.
So how do we do that? Because the reality is that these babies many of them don't want to sleep by themselves these first weeks and give us a 3-hour chunk in their bassinet.
Yes. Well, I will tell you that ideal scenario for those that do not intend to bed share is doing what you have to do to get them to fall asleep and then having them practice, staying asleep in their bassinet, knowing that they are going to wake up after maybe an hour or two. Their sleep cycles are short. They're going to get hungry relatively quickly. But when they are asleep and when you're asleep, ideally having them in their safest sleep scenario. Now, there will be a lot of people, I'm sure, that are listening to you that are also big proponents of bed sharing. And I will say that there are some things that those that are hardcore safe sleep surface folks and those that are, I'm going to try to safely bed share folks, there are some things that everybody can agree on. And I think it's important to share those things, which is the most dangerous thing that you can do, or the most dangerous things that you can do are sofa share or recliner share with your child when you're both sleeping. Right. That those are notoriously multiple orders of magnitude higher when it comes to risk than the other kind of safe sleep scenarios. Right. So we're not going to do that. If we're going to share a bed space, we're definitely not going to be drinking alcohol or smoking. We know that those are also huge risk factors. We're not going to have an old bed, an old mattress, because that can also predispose to challenges. So, and I think everybody can agree on that. Now, to the mother or to the parents that want to practice safe sleep scenarios and are like, but my kid is not sleeping, I will completely agree that there are other risks that can occur to both the child and the parent when everybody's sleep deprived. And I hear that. We talk just about safe sleep when it comes to SID and SUID, but there are a whole other ramification you have to think about when it comes to parental sleep. And my approach here is ideally still trying to have them spend their time on a safe sleep surface and do what you have to do to get them to fall asleep. So whether that's holding, rocking, nursing, pacifier, whatever it takes, you get them to fall asleep and then transfer them into a safe sleep surface, if that's the direction that you are choosing to go. Now, I'm happy to talk about lullaby because this is the exact scenario where I feel like even myself, when we had kids, my kid drop kicked me in the face. I knew all the techniques when it comes to sleep, and we were just struggling those first few months. But there's nothing that necessarily helps children sleep in their safe sleep space because by nature, it's supposed to be boring and firm and not with anything else in it and on their backs, all of which make sleep more challenging. So my goal here is to give people options, as many options as possible, whether it be sleep education, whether it be, lullaby or a smart crib mattress, whatever I can do to help make that more possible, more likely to happen, both sleep and safe sleep surface.
Yeah, I appreciate everything you just said because I feel like you address something that is not addressed, let's say, at the bedside. Like when we're discharging these parents to home and we're going through all the things, right? And we're addressing sleep and, hey, put them in, the ABCs of safe sleep. And we go through the kind of rote American pediatrics, alone on their back in their crib or bassinet, whatever, and we don't get into the nuance of what I feel like you just addressed, which is, hey, if you're falling asleep with your baby, like don't set up in a chair and a couch and think that's better than them sleeping in your bed, right? I think even in the AAP statement, correct me if I'm wrong, they address this like if you're falling asleep, because we recognize that parents sometimes fall asleep with newborn babies, like it's safer to fall asleep in a bed. Now, they're not saying that bed sharing is safer, the ABCs still apply, that's the safest thing, but like that knowledge of, hey guys, don't fall asleep in the rocker because you're trying not to fall asleep in the bed with them. And I just think back to my first, and my husband and I, we were on the couch with the baby, taking shifts, every single night, at least for the first couple weeks, I would say, trying to figure it out together. And both of us were constantly falling asleep with this swaddled baby on a couch. Like, it freaks me out when I think back, like how quickly she could have tumbled out of our arms, been smushed between us and the couch. Just little things like that, where it's like, we thought we were doing, I'm going to say the right thing, because our goal was safe ABCs. I know I keep going back to the acronym, but alone in her bassinet. And we were actually doing something that was inherently more dangerous than if she were to fall asleep with me while I was, in the bed, following those rules kind of you just mentioned, like safe sleep 70 type things. And no one ever told us. No one ever said, hey, assuming, let's say, air quotes, you want to do all the right things when it comes to sleep, let's also check in on what happens if you were to fall asleep, because it's very possible, And so I appreciate that you addressed that. And I appreciate that the AAP has that in there, not because they're trying to make it confusing and condone different things, but simply to say, hey, reality is you're really tired and people fall asleep with these little babies all the time. So let's address how to do that in the safest way possible, until you get back to whatever your goals are or whatever that might be. So mostly I'm grateful you said that. And I'm grateful that people are saying that now, because it feels very do it this way or co-sleep and have them in your bed all the time. And I'm like, what about the parents who want to do it this way, but also fall asleep and then are trying to not freak out, but also like, I don't like how this is feeling. Like, how do I do this as well as we can when I'm really tired and they're 12 days old?
The worst thing we can do is make that blanket statement to say there should be absolutely no bed sharing, and then somebody assumes that recliner sharing or sofa sharing is not bed sharing, right? So I mean, it's I think it happens all the time. So we definitely have to make that pitch. Sofa sharing, recliner sharing is about the most unsafe thing. So you have to be very careful. Yeah.
So important. So hear that, you guys. That beautiful rocker glider you bought for your nursery, it's not a safe place for them to you two to fall asleep together. Don't do it.
That's right. Now, if they're doing a contact nap and you're awake, no problem, right? I mean, but
it's the best.
But geez, it's you fall asleep so quickly as a sleep deprived parent. You think you're wide awake 1 minute and the next minute you're out. So just please be careful.
Hey friend, quick pause for just a second. If you are listening to this podcast because you want to feel more prepared, more confident, and less freaked out about birth, that is exactly why I created the Your Body, Your Birth course. This birth course will not tell you what kind of birth you should want, and nobody has the right to do that. It is about helping you understand what's happening in your body, what your options actually are, and how to walk into your birth feeling grounded, excited, ready, instead of overwhelmed and scared. When you have education like this, everything changes. Your mindset, your conversations with your care team, and the birth experience itself. No more relying on random opinions, okay? Stop scrolling. Take intentional action with me and start trusting your body, your voice, and your decisions today. Head over to www.thelabormama.com/birth, also linked in your show notes, and be sure to use the code podcast at checkout to save 20% and start working towards this better birth for you right now. Okay. Let's get you back to the episode.
Yeah. Okay. I want to get into, you kind of mentioned one of these when you were talking about the melatonin and the breast milk, some sleep kind of narratives, ideas. I don't want to call them all myths, but just some stuff out there, and then get your thoughts on them. So you can treat it a little rapid fiery. I have like 5 or 6. I just love to hear what your response is to these. So the first one, what are your thoughts on that narrative idea that sleep begets sleep?
Yeah. So I will tell you that in my mind, it's good sleep habits beget good sleep habits beget good sleep. Let's put it that way, right? So there's nothing that we know physiologically that says just because you sleep beautifully this night, you're going to end up sleeping more the next night. Otherwise, some of us great sleepers will just turn into constant like hibernating creatures because we'll be sleeping all the time. So I would say that the good sleep habits you put in place will hopefully help you get the amount of sleep that you need, and then you will continue to do that day in and day out because of those good sleep habits. Now, for infants particularly, their 24-hour sleep need is their 24-hour sleep need. And it's usually on average around 14 hours, but the range is actually very wide, like frighteningly wide when their children are really young. And so for them, they're probably going to get their full sleep need one way or the other, regardless of what you kind of do or try to do when they're really young. Because again, that sleep drive is so high. So we don't really have a lot of us like truly sleep deprived young infants. Like they will get their sleep one way or the other.
Right. Okay. You just mentioned something within that, which is that idea of needs in 24 hours. Will you speak to that a little bit more? Because I love that parents think more like, okay, they need about this in a day versus this nap has to be XYZ or whatever.
Yeah, I will tell you that trying to schedule naps is just an exercise in frustration, and you're going to end up pulling your hair out. At the end of the day, children are going to nap however the heck they want to nap. You can set them up for success best you can. But I really encourage you to think about it in a 24-hour window, which is, yes, are they getting what I think is their quote unquote sleep need? It's genetically determined, really. If both parents tend to be short sleepers, I have a lot of patients where both parents are physicians and they're naturally both really short sleepers. And then what happens in that scenario? Well, the child is a short sleeper and they end up in my clinic saying, my kid's only sleeping 8 hours a night or 9 hours a night. And I'm like, oh, well, you're probably a short sleeper too. And so
this is your fault. This is your genetics.
This is sleep karma coming back. The misery you gave your parents is not
Your
coming
mother,
back to
yeah.
get you. That's right. So no, but I like to think about in a 24-hour period, because that also helps set you up for success, because you're like, oh, my kid's a wonderful napper and he's taking 6 hours worth of naps. Why is he only sleeping 9 hours a night? And I'm like, well, let's think about it in a 24-hour period, not have a nap in a nighttime.
Okay, so that's what I wanted you to get to as well, because that brings me to this next one, is this idea of never wake a sleeping baby. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it depends on your goals, right? So it depends, because 100% on your goals. I don't like waking up kids, but if your child is napping at 5 p.m. and your goal is for them to go down at 6:30 and they're like an older infant, that you're setting yourself up for issues. So I say either, yes, you can consider waking them up if you need. If there is a structure that you're trying to abide by that's worked for you, that's fine. You're not gonna hurt them. They might be a little bit cranky when you wake them up, but you can gently wake them up to get that sleep drive built up. Or you can compensate for that larger nap by pushing bedtime a little bit later, with that whole framework that we talked about of the 24-hour sleep. And so don't expect your child to have a really low sleep drive and then magically then sleep through the night because they've only had like an hour and a half wake window and they're 6 months of age. It's just not going to work. So it depends on your goals. Yeah.
Right. And that's why I wanted to bring that together, because I think that 24-hour, like needs in 24 hours, is a really valuable part of the conversation. And also this idea of, hey, you mentioned like if your baby takes a 6-hour nap, well, guess what? They're not going to go to bed at 7 p.m. anymore. And I think that sometimes we do think, well, it's bedtime, right? And I'm doing the routine. And it's like, well, but they're going to, if they were to truly go to bed right now, you're trying to make them sleep 20 hours today in this 24-hour period. They're not going to do it, right? And so I think that sometimes gets a little lost in the weeds sometimes, because we just think they took a great nap, sleep begets sleep. Well, it's like, well, maybe they took a very long nap. If you're fine with that, great. But then you need to adjust on the other end because of the, kind of, again, going back to that, their sleep need in one day. Well, we're pushing that limit. That's fine. But like you have to adjust somewhere for that. And I think sometimes parents aren't getting that, or they're not putting that all together. It's more just like they should take 2 naps a day and we go to bed around 7. But there is a lot of like flexibility and nuance in that.
Yes.
That we have to be, addressing, or else we're going to end up frustrated, like you're talking about.
And there's very useful sleep physiology that I'll nerd out for a second, if you don't mind, just because I think it helps drive this point home, which is there are 2 main processes that modulate how we feel throughout the day when it comes to wake and sleep. One is the circadian rhythm that's naturally just hanging out in the background, 24-hour period, regardless of what we do. It's giving us awake signals and sleepy signals. That's kind of operating on its own. But the other one is called a homeostatic sleep drive, which is essentially the longer we're awake, the sleepier our brain feels. And that's modulated by a variety of chemicals that build up in our brain, but the main one is adenosine from the breakdown of ATP, which is our energy molecule. And we have receptors in our brain that bind onto that adenosine, and our brain can tell, I've been awake for 6 hours, I've been awake for 10 hours, I've been awake for 12 hours. That's your sleep drive. That's why you can't really stay awake for, 2 or 3 straight days. Your brain is going to force you to go to sleep or start taking micro sleeps because that sleep drive is so high. So for children, we have to think about that. Is their sleep drive building up enough during wakefulness? Are we adding enough sleep drive during wakefulness to help promote deeper, longer sleep at night if they're at the age where we can try to promote that?
Yeah, perfect. You can always geek out with me. I love all that kind of stuff.
Yes, I love geeky stuff. Oh, and by the way, what blocks adenosine receptors? Caffeine. Caffeine is it's a temporary trick displacing adenosine, and so you don't feel as sleepy as your brain really is. But it doesn't get rid of the adenosine; it's still there. So when your caffeine leaves your system, you kind of hit that wall because the adenosine is hanging out. Your brain always knows. There's no trick.
So then you drink another cup of coffee, right?
You drink another cup of coffee, and then you have disrupted
your body.
and then you have disrupted sleep the entire night. You wake up feeling miserable, and guess what? You grab more coffee. It's a great cycle for Starbucks. Terrible for your brain, but great for Starbucks.
Okay, good to know. Okay, so you just mentioned wakefulness. You said the term wake windows a couple times. So another kind of big thing out there Well, I would say just the topic of wake windows, but really I've also heard there's no science behind wake windows. So just don't even worry about them. I've heard that a little bit. I love wake windows. I'll just tell you that. But what are your kind of thoughts on that? Or if people are coming to you with
Wake windows,
ideas about that?
I like them in concept because it actually gets down to what we know of sleep physiology, which is yes, your sleep drive does build up. And so I love having a rough kind of ballpark estimate of this is the typical range for wake windows at this age. Again, it gives you the foundation on which to then build off of. But oftentimes, if people are saying this is the exact wake window, I say, well, we don't know what the child's sleep needs truly are. We don't know what number of naps they're taking because that'll vary depending on the child and the age. So we have to take all that into account. But the concept of wake windows is still steeped in the known physiology of the homeostatic sleep drive, which is sleep builds the longer you're awake. So that's why I like wake windows for that reason. I don't like to be prescriptive about it because the variation of sleep range is so wide, but I love for families to think about that, to be like, gosh, is this wake window too short? And that's usually the issue. It's usually too short when they're trying to promote better sleep as the infants get older.
Right. It makes me think of the whole, I'm going to say cliche, but my mother-in-law did this as well. But the whole like, they're not tired. Look how awake they are. But it trickles into, I think wake windows really trickle into sleep cues, right? And if I were to tell a friend or even students in my own courses and we're talking about sleep, it would be, I'd care less about you watching the clock as much as you watching them and how they're cueing you, right?
Yeah.
And so wake windows I love. And maybe you're like, okay, they're usually up about an hour, this week of their life because I feel like they change so much.
Yes.
But also I'd rather you be looking for the cues anyway and understanding what those are and how those are indicating, hey, sleep is approaching, sleep is encroaching, like they're looking like they're ready.
Are you proposing we actually take the child into account here, Lo? This is crazy. This is crazy talk. Yeah, no, 100%. Because the other thing about wake windows is that by nature, they should be different depending on the time of the day. Oftentimes they're much shorter earlier because of our circadian rhythm. And so, yeah, wake windows can be all over the place. But you're right on the money here. Like if you can read your child and you start to get a little bit of that glazed look, or they get a little bit of that redness in their face, or a little bit of that yawn, and you're like, yeah, I can see them getting tired now. Go with it, regardless of what the wake window's telling you. Just go with it.
It makes me think of my husband, God bless him, but sleep's never been the thing he's like the best and most supportive in or whatever. Mm-hmm. And he's always like, okay, what time do they need to go to sleep? If I were to leave them and go do whatever. And I'm like, well, around noon-ish, but like if her eyebrows get red, my kids, some of them, they had like the red eyebrow thing, whatever. They each had different cues too. And the cues would show up at different, like yawning for some of them was an early cue versus a late cue. Mm-hmm. There's all this stuff that, we figured out over time. Mostly I figured out over time. and so I felt like so often, and he probably like so many people want that a little bit more prescriptive because it just feels easier. Like, oh, they go down around noon. But there really is a lot more that goes into it. And I think that's where watch your baby sounds very rote, right? Like blah, blah, blah. But really watch your baby and get to know your baby. And they're going to tell you so much more than the clock.
Yeah. And I agree. And it gets easier the older they get because I feel like they do get more predictable. The patterns get more predictable. And so there is a time where you might be able to be a little bit more prescriptive and be like, yeah, they always go to sleep at this time. And because they've shown you that pattern. But especially early on, it can be very hard. And I will also have a caveat here to those whose children don't give them any cues. Because my first went from like wide open to like fully asleep in like the matter of like a second when he was nursing. I was asking my wife, what's coming out of there? Is this whiskey? Like there was no cues whatsoever. And he'd go from content and awake to completely out cold. And so that can happen too. And that can be a little bit more challenging. But then you get into, again, patterns where you're like, okay, this is what's working. This is the time frame that's working. And we're going to stick with that pattern.
That makes me think back to where I talked about anchors, right? And just having those things, you're like, I got some patterns.
Yes.
I'm sure you probably are like anti that schedule vocabulary as I am as a parent too. But like definitely patterns, rhythms, routines where you just float around them and know like we're not always going to hit it right at 12:05 p.m. But we can float around these things and recognize that we're getting close to something, that we can be watching for something. Yeah, I just love that idea of floating around these rhythms or the scaffolding, to use your vocabulary from earlier.
Yeah.
Okay, absolutely. One more. Okay, kind of two more, but I feel like I know what you're going to say. So I'll ask you this one. You could be quick if you want. Mm-hmm. Nursing to sleep is a crutch. What do you say to that?
I would say no. I mean, particularly early on, you can do anything that you want, to help a child fall asleep because they often need that closeness. They need that comfort. As children are getting older, a lot of it depends on what pattern that you're developing. So if it's a child that's waking up 3 times at night and they're truly just using mom as a pacifier, or their little mom's like they're not actually getting a full feed. They maybe latch for 30 seconds and they're out again. Then you could say, well, this is turning into a little bit more of a habit than a caloric intake and a nutrition, a behavior. So it all really depends on the patterns. The goal long term, again, is if sleep is a problem for you after a certain age, which is typically around 4 to 6 months, if the sleep patterns are problematic for your family, then we look at the pattern of what's going on, how the child is falling asleep, and determine if things need to be changed. If it's not a problem for you, for example, you nurse your child to sleep, they're 6 months old, they wake up twice, they want to feed, you nurse them back to sleep quickly, you fall asleep quickly, and you all wake up in the morning fine. If it's not a problem for you, nothing needs to be fixed. Right. So in that case, who cares if somebody calls it a sleep crutch? Are you doing okay? Is your baby doing okay? And I don't care. Do your thing. Do your thing. But then you get to decide what a problem is or what problematic sleep looks like, because every family and every household is different.
I wish we could just stop the episode right there because it's such a good place to end. But I have one more question. But I
Editing,
love that because, yeah, right. I nursed my kiddos to sleep at night, but I didn't nurse them to sleep for naps. And we figured out what we liked. And so it was like, I'm going to nurse them when I feel like it. And I'm going to, figure out, try not to nurse them when I feel like, and this happened later, like you're saying, those first weeks, like just feed the baby and they fall asleep and whatever. But it just always bugged me when everyone's like, nursing to sleep's like a crutch or you should avoid it. I'm like, are you kidding me? I do it sometimes when I want to, and we figured out, and this is what works for us. And so that's what I really liked about what you just said too, is if something's not a problem for your family, you do not have to change a single thing. And I think that is, the idea. Let's end it right there, because that's what I would want people to hear. If someone else wants their 6-month-old to sleep through the night, great. They can pursue that if that's what they need and that's what their family needs. If you don't or you aren't and you're fine with it, you do not have to change a single thing. And I think that gets lost sometimes in this sleep conversation because you think their baby's doing this, mine is not. What should I do about it? But if you're happy and you're good and your family's okay with how things look, then keep doing what you're doing. Don't change something that isn't, I guess I'll say broken, not that babies are broken, but why are we messing with something when we're okay with it just because our neighbor is doing it differently? I mean,
That's right. That's right. And also on the flip side, I always like to say, because it's working for your neighbor and it's not a problem for them, doesn't mean that you should feel like it's not a problem for you if it is a problem for you, right? So they may be able to fall asleep quickly. You may have insomnia. You may be driving around a lot during the day and you'd prefer a more consolidated night of sleep. So, you should not feel guilt over needing to change something if the solutions are safe and effective, which there are numerous solutions in that realm. So on either side of the coin, I feel like no judgment, judgment free. You need that help. There are things that can be done that are effective and safe. And if you don't, that's wonderful. Nobody should tell you have a problem.
It's interesting to think that we need to do parenting in community, right? We need each other, but there's also this aspect of some of these things we need to be doing almost in a silo as well, just in that thought of like other people don't get to decide what makes sense for you and your family. So it's like you get to choose those things, and then we lean on each other as we pursue whatever feels right for us and our families. So it's this weird dance of like, I'm not going to look around and let you tell me how to do this, but I am going to look around when I need you and I am in the midst of something. It's kind of this funky little in between. Yeah.
It's so tough because even the folks that are, I think, very like research based and like to look at data, we are always biased a bit by our own experiences when it comes to things like, for example, sleep training or the things that we've heard online, regarding what should or should not be done. And no matter what parenting forum you post a question on for opinions, you're going to get the range. And I feel like oftentimes we're left with more questions than answers. And I like to say there are like a million right ways to do it because we're always on this endless odyssey of what's the one right solution that's going to make everything perfect for my life? And the answer is there's probably a million different ways to do it and end up with a thriving, healthy, happy child, right? And I think parents need to know that. Like there is usually no one right solution as long as you are keeping your child fed and sheltered and safe.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Again, want to end there, but just kidding. I want to ask you one more thing because I think it comes up a lot. Okay. Sleeping through the night. How's it actually defined or qualified? Is it
There
truly
is
12 hours?
there is zero definition of sleeping through the night. Sleeping
Thank
through the
you.
night is whatever
Amen.
helps you be happy with what you got. It is funny because when I've looked into this research to be like, well, how have studies tried to define a good stretch of sleep? And it ranges. Some people say a 6 hour time frame in which a
That's what
parent
I've
does not
seen.
have to respond. It can be an 8 hour time frame at any point in the night. It can be an 8 hour time frame defined by a certain period of time from like 11 to 7. It's all over the map. If your kid is connecting some sleep cycles and everybody's getting good restorative sleep, then your kid's sleeping through the night. And you can
Yeah.
define that however you'd like.
Yeah. I just think it gets tossed around so much. Like, let me help you and your child sleep through the night. I'm like, what do you mean? Where did that come from? 12 hours? That's BS. Someone made that
Yeah.
up and now we all talk about it. Like, I
Yes.
just think, but
Yeah.
it is so prevalent, right? This idea of
Yes.
7 to 7 or whatever. And so
Yes.
sometimes like we are chasing a goalpost that doesn't even exist. It's not
That's
even
right.
real.
That's right. That's right. And the reality is like no human being sleeps through the night in when it comes to sleep physiology. I've read thousands of sleep studies. Not a single person has slept 100% of the night. That's normal. We should be waking up, especially after we go through a sleep cycle. And that's why children tend to wake up a bit more because their sleep cycles are shorter. But that's healthy, that's protective. You want to shift around. You don't want to sleep on your arm the entire night and then you don't have any blood flowing to your fingers for 8 hours at night. We want to have those awakenings. So normal,
Yeah.
protective.
Well, I feel like I could talk to you all day about sleep, but I will officially stop and not ask any more questions. This is great. Thank you. I just think it's just an area of angst as we kind of wait. And then once we're in it as well. And I don't know that it has to be. I think it is tough, but it doesn't have to feel so like divisive, make us feel so unsure about the choices we're making or what we're doing. And I hate that. I hate that a lot of parents just end up feeling so kind of out of control in it. Just wonder if more of
love.
that normal expectation
Yes.
can help us change that.
Let's make it less spicy, to use the word that you
Yeah.
used. A little less spicy.
Yeah.
Turn down the volume just a little bit. Yeah.
I'll take it. I love it. Okay, one question I love asking at the end. Well, kind of two. One, tell us where we can find you. I know you kind of mentioned it when you introed yourself, but where they can find you on social or online, where they can find this kind of smart sleep mattress that you have as well, because I know that is part of what you do and what you've been working on the last couple of years.
Yeah.
And then after you do that, I'll ask the last question.
Sure. That Sleep Doc is my handle on just about every social media platform: Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, YouTube. And Lullaby is the name of our smart crib mattress. We invented out of Duke, and we hope it's going to make hopefully parenting a little bit easier for those that choose to use it. It's another option out there to keep your kid in a safe sleep space and help them with their sleep.
Remind me, is it standard sized mattress, bassinet?
100%. It looks like
just a mattress, right? A crib,
it's just
like
a
a crib
mattress.
mattress.
That's
Okay.
right. It's a lot of regulation in the U.S. about the sizes of crib mattresses, and so they're all very standardized. So it's a standard crib mattress. It's meant to replace your crib mattress. Yeah.
Okay. Sounds good. And then last question, just for fun, what is something in your life right now that's just bringing a ton of joy to you?
My kids have gotten older, so I have 2 boys. They're 10 and 12, and they are great sleepers. But what brings me joy is that sometimes we can break with the sleep routines, So if my kid is like, hey, can you stick around for a little bit longer, or scratch my back for a little bit, or I need a little extra time at night, I feel like our routines and everything have gotten so robust that we can break these, these AKA like strict routines and do whatever we want and still have great sleep. And so I love being able to do that. Yeah.
It is really one of the sweetest places to get to with your kids. And I think that it can happen earlier too, where you're like, you know what? If we push this nap today or we skip it, we're going to be okay. We'll get them to sleep tonight. We can go to Disneyland, whatever. I remember that period with all the kids where you're like, okay, we're okay. Like we're going to still have some moments, but we can do this today or we can do this week and it's going to be totally fine. And that feels so good. Yeah.
Life is important. Life happens, sometimes we have to make space for life.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for making space for me today. Look at that great
Same.
segue to the ending.
Good.
This is a great conversation. And I'm excited to turn down the spice in the sleep world.
I love it.
This does.
Yes. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for listening to the Lo and Behold podcast. I hope there was something for you in today's episode that made you think, made you laugh, or made you feel seen. For show notes and links to the resources, freebies, or discount codes mentioned in this episode, please head over to loandbeholdpodcast.com. If you aren't following along yet, make sure to tap subscribe or follow in your podcast app so we can keep hanging out together. And if you haven't heard it yet today, you're doing a really good job. A little reminder for you before you go. Opinions shared by guests of this show are their own and do not always reflect those of myself and the Labor Mama platform. Additionally, the information you hear on this podcast or that you receive via any linked resources should not be considered medical advice. Please see our full disclaimer at the link in your show notes.